My name is Bryce Richard. I am the author of the book Conquering Our Basics. In this video exercise, I'm going to demonstrate how to export and import data sets into R. More importantly, if you are coming from Excel, one of the things you're going to be interested in is being able to import data from Excel into R. This is not entirely clear how to do this. And typically, many users of R who are not familiar with importing data directly from Excel into R will provide an intermediary step to do this. That is to say, they will convert their XLS or Xlsx files into what's called a comma-separated value file, also known as a CSV, and then they will import that file into R. That's an extra step that's not necessary, and I'm going to show you how to mitigate that with reducing that step, taking that step out of the mix. But first, let's talk about reading a file from our folder. So in this example, the home is considered where your My Documents is, and I have a folder in the My Documents called Sample that has two files provided in it. One is called cluster ds CSV, and the other is called ds_test XLS. Now, it doesn't matter if you're using an XLS or an Xlsx file. I just happen to be using an older version of Excel. So we're going to be using in this exercise an XLS, but you can use either file format. So what we're going to do is we're going to read the contents of this cluster ds.csv into this environment here as a separate data object. And this is very simple to do. At its basic level, we use one argument, and that argument is the file, what's called the file path, including the file name. So here's the file path, including the file name, and we're using a function called read.csv. And we're going to convert that into a data object called ds. So once that I press the enter key, it's going to import this data from this location in the underscore sample folder to the actual application. And if we left click this icon here, and then we look into the script editor window, we'll see that this information is in fact imported. So there are a total of 1,000 entries, that is to say observations or records, and 4 columns. Pretty simple. The next step is to write a table. Now we're going to export a text file. So this was in the first exercise, we imported a CSV, and now we're going to export from R data into a text file. And the way that we do that is first we're going to extract a data set unique to R called trees so that we have something with which to work. And we type in the first few characters to kind of orient that. And what that does is it creates a data set called trees. Now it has 31 records and 3 variables. If we left click this icon here, we'll see that, it's just a basic data set with 31 records, 3 columns. What we want to do is to export this data into this location here, into this sample folder, as a text file. So a text file will be represented by what's called a file extension. A file extension is a 3 to 5 to 6 to 7 character series that are preceded by a period. So we're going to write this table. Now there are a couple of ways. There's 2 ways you can write this. You can write the arguments laterally, or you can write them vertically. I'm writing them vertically here so that it's easier to kind of see and parse them out as I'm describing them. So there are 5 arguments that are required to export successfully this trees file. The first one is identifying the object itself, which is x equals, that's the name of the argument, is called x, it's called trees. The second one is the file path, including the file name. So we're going to call this trees.txt, and this file path is going to allow it to pop up here. The row names is the third argument, and that's a Boolean value of either true or false, and we're going to indicate that as false. What that does is that if I say true, that will create a separate field with these row numbers. I don't need that. But if you do need that, you would put row numbers equals true there. Then we have the separator. The separator allows you, it's called a delimiter, that allows you to distinguish how these fields are parsed. Now, if you're looking at this from a table perspective, then obviously the constraints are the actual lines themselves that are parsing the data. But a text file is not a graphic file format. It is text only, alphanumeric. So we need a separately defined character that parses this data. Now, this is called a pipe. You can use a comma or any number of other delimiters. I don't like the comma because a comma, if you're working with text and you have a comma that's inside, independent of a delimiter, then what it'll do is it won't parse the data correctly. So the safest delimiter, in my opinion, is for a text file is what's called the pipe. And then quote equals false means that the natural inclination when R exports data is to put quotation marks around the field names. We don't want that because we want to keep it consistent. So once that we hit the enter key with all of these, each of these arguments having been filled, there are 5 of them, then what will happen is if you look down here in this lower right-hand corner, this is called the Files Package Plot window, you will see that file pop up, and there it is. It's called trees text. And if we open that up, it's going to give us in R. Now, this is in R, but it's actually just a view. This is the information with, you'll see it's represented with the delimiter. And this allows us to really organize the data insofar as we can organize it in a text file. Now, the next and final step deals with Excel files, how to import and export those. So here we have a dstext.xls. And just to open this up, if you left click and then click View File, it will actually give you a preview of the file itself. It opens it up independent of R and allows you to see the content. So in this exercise, we have, or in this example, we have 3 tabs: measure, chick, and orange. What we want to do is we want to read in the sheet index number is the sheet number that we want to read in. So we've got number 2 that we've allocated here. So what we're saying is, of these 3 tabs, we want to import the chick tab. This is the distinction that's made with that argument. So we're going to import just that tab as a separate object called XL. But before we do that, we have to install a library and load a library called Xlsx. This allows us to utilize this function, which will be used in both the importation and the exportation of files. So I've already installed it, so we're just going to load this, and it tells us some information that it was built in a previous version, no big deal. And then what we're going to do is we're going to utilize only 2 arguments to import this in. So XL is the name of the actual data object in R that will be read. It'll be configured under here in the global environment. And there's 2 arguments that we're interested in: the file, which is the file path, including the file name, ds_test. That's this file we just previously viewed. And then secondly, the second argument is sheet index. This lets us know which tab to use. Now, if you're only using a spreadsheet that has 1 tab, then you would not use this. You don't need that if it's only 1 tab. So we hit the enter key, or press the enter key, and XL is here. This XL object, it's 178 records and 8 variables. And if we left click this button here, this opens this up, and this is the information. And just to ensure that this is in fact the information that was imported, we can left click on DS text and click View File. We can go to the second tab, and this is in fact replicates that information. Now to export data, this is the final part of the exercise. We want to take this trees that we previously created, this object, and export it out, not as a text file, but as an XLS file. So to do that, we're going to use a function called write Xlsx. So read Xlsx imports them, write exports them. And we use a different series of arguments. These are still 5 arguments, but we're using, instead of a sep argument, we're using, because we don't need that, it's moving to Excel, we need an append. And what that means is that it's appending this information to the test, the DS test. If we don't say append, it will rewrite all of these tabs. So we want to append this to the end. So when we're done with this exercise, it should say this spreadsheet should contain the following tabs: measure, chick, orange, and then trees. So let's do that. It does it very quickly. And then if we left click on DS test and then view file, there's the trees. So this allows us very effectively to move data in and out of Excel, to import and export CSV files and text files. My name is Bryce Richard. Thanks for watching.